The Galactic Council was a towering institution, a vast political entity formed by the most powerful and ancient species in the universe. Across the stars, they maintained an iron grip on the balance of power. From the sleek, towering ships that circled their homeworlds to the glistening forums where their representatives met, every decision they made was a decree that shaped the future of billions. And yet, despite their majestic presence, the Council's view of Earth remained clouded by condescension and fear. To them, humanity was an unpredictable species, primitive, violent, and without order. It was a species teetering between destruction and evolution, and they feared what might happen if Earth ever learned how to truly wield power. But there was one human who stood apart from the rest, a figure cloaked in myth and fear. Dracula's son, a being both human and vampire, was the bridge between Earth's chaotic past and its potential future. His father, once a king of darkness, had adapted to the changing tides of humanity, stepping from the shadows to become a reluctant protector. His son, however, was different, a hybrid, born of both human and vampiric nature, marked by a strength that surpassed even Dracula's formidable power. Though young in comparison to his father, Dracula's son had earned a place among the stars. He had been part of the Earth's delegation to the Galactic Council, a symbol of Earth's potential in galactic politics. His diplomatic skills, enhanced by the charisma of his vampire lineage, allowed him to broker fragile alliances and advocate for Earth's right to exist alongside other advanced species. His presence had become a delicate balancing act, one that kept the human species from being completely sidelined by more powerful races. But despite his success, Earth's place in the galaxy was a constant source of tension. The Council's members were not the kind to embrace the unknown or the wild unpredictability of humanity, and the growing strength of the human race worried them. The hybrid vampire, too powerful to ignore, had become a symbol of humanity's ascent, and that was something the Council could not tolerate. They saw him as a threat, a dangerous force that could destabilize the delicate order they had cultivated for millennia. One fateful night, during a critical summit, the unthinkable happened. As Dracula's son entered the council chamber, his usual confident stride faltering only slightly beneath the weight of the atmosphere, the assassination was carried out with precision. A quiet whisper of technology, an unseen dart, a deadly injection, was enough to end the life of Earth's representative. The hybrid's body crumpled to the floor, his final breath a quiet defiance. The council, ever calculating, would later justify it as an act of preservation. He had been an anomaly, a symbol of human power too great to leave unchecked. And so, with one swift, cold stroke, the council silenced the threat. They believed they had eradicated a dangerous spark before it could ignite. But the murder of Dracula's son would not go unnoticed. In a forgotten crypt deep beneath the ruins of ancient Earth, Dracula stood alone. His form, as timeless as the night itself, appeared almost ethereal. He had spent centuries beneath the earth, hidden away from the ever-encroaching progress of humanity. But when news of his son's death reached him, a cold fury, older than any mortal fear, stirred within his immortal heart. His son, the last tie to a legacy of darkness, had been taken from him. There would be no mourning, no grieving period. The ancient vampire knew the consequences of grief. It was weakness, and he would not allow himself to falter. His son's death had shattered something deep within him, but it had also awakened a power he had not called upon for eons. The council had made a fatal mistake. They had forgotten one thing about Dracula, and it was a truth as old as the vampire's existence. He never forgave. His mind pulsed with fury, and through the depths of his centuries-long existence, a new purpose took shape: vengeance. The council had murdered his son, and now they would pay the price. Not in blood alone, but through the fury of humanity itself. The era of peaceful diplomacy had ended. The time for war had come. Dracula's power surged as he reached across the stars, contacting human colonies, rogue factions, and forgotten alliances that had long since given up on the notion of galactic peace. Humanity, too, had a darkness within them, a potential that could now be fully realized. The hybrid vampire had been proof of that potential, and his death would be the spark that ignited it. "Let them feel the wrath of Earth," Dracula whispered into the cold winds of space. "Let them know the fury of the darkness they have unleashed." And so, the seeds of war were planted. The Galactic Council had made an enemy of the wrong person, and now they would face the storm that was Dracula and the humans who followed him, unleashed upon the galaxy. Dracula's ancient castle loomed on the edge of the ruined world, its Gothic spires piercing the endless night sky. Here, deep within the heart of Earth, the vampire lord prepared for war. The news of his son's assassination had ignited something deep within him, something primal, yet bound in the quiet elegance of centuries-old power. He had never cared much for the politics of the galaxy, nor had he ever sought the approval of the Galactic Council. But the murder of his son? That could not go unanswered. His thoughts were sharp and clear as he descended into the bowels of his castle, where artifacts of immense power lay dormant. The cryptic relics of his people, vampires who had once ruled empires, were now tools for vengeance. For centuries, Dracula had secluded himself from the galactic conflicts, choosing instead to watch the slow rise of humanity from the shadows. But now, with his son's blood staining the stars, his long-forgotten connections to humanity's darker factions began to stir. He raised his hand, and an ancient artifact, a blackened stone orb, hovered toward him. It thrummed with dark energy, its pulse echoing in the air around him. With a whisper, Dracula invoked the powers sealed within the orb. The stone dissolved into a mist of shadow, flowing into his veins like liquid darkness. The power of an ancient vampire king surged through him, amplifying his already terrifying strength. He would need every ounce of it to dismantle the Galactic Council's empire. The hour of vengeance had arrived. Dracula summoned his allies, humanity's forgotten sons and daughters, those who had been cast aside by the rest of the galaxy. They were scattered across the stars, living in the margins of space where the Galactic Council's influence couldn't reach. Outlaws, rebels, and exiles, they knew the face of oppression well, and now they would answer the call of the man who had once ruled over them with an iron fist. Among these allies was a notorious pirate captain named Selene, a woman whose cunning had earned her a reputation as the most feared human in the Outer Rim. She and Dracula had crossed paths before, and their uneasy alliance had only deepened over time. Dracula knew that if he wanted to strike the Council swiftly, Selene would be crucial. She controlled a fleet of ships, fast, stealthy, and lethal, each one armed with technology scavenged from long-lost alien empires. Dracula's first target was the Council's outermost stronghold, a massive fortress floating in the cold expanse of space. The Council believed it was secure, a quiet, isolated citadel far from the reach of anyone foolish enough to challenge it. But they had underestimated Dracula and the lengths he would go to for vengeance. Under the cloak of darkness, Dracula's ship, the Nocturne, approached the fortress. The ship was a thing of nightmares, black as the void, with ornate carvings etched into its hull. A terrifying fusion of vampire craft and advanced human technology, it was both a weapon and a symbol of Dracula's might. The Nocturne was fueled by a blend of dark sorcery and human ingenuity, a true testament to what humanity could achieve when it embraced its darker side. Selene's fleet was already in position, her ships waiting in the shadows like predators circling their prey. Her voice crackled through the comms, cold and calculated. "We're in position. The Council won't know what hit them." Dracula smiled to himself. His people, once scattered and ignored, had become a force to be reckoned with. He was a reminder to the galaxy that no matter how far humanity had come, its dark roots were always within reach. The assault was swift, brutal. As Dracula's forces descended upon the fortress, they employed tactics that blended human ingenuity with the darkness of vampiric power. Ships cloaked in shadows, phantoms moving through the void, they struck with surgical precision. The Council security was overwhelmed within minutes, their defenses crumbling as Dracula's forces tore through them with unrelenting fury. The fear they spread was palpable. the realization dawning too late that the Council had underestimated the threat they had sparked. Dracula himself was a shadow on the battlefield, moving like a ghost between the wreckage. His enemies never saw him coming. His vampiric speed and strength made him an unstoppable force. He tore through soldiers, his blood-red eyes glowing with an ancient hunger. The air hummed with energy as he unleashed his dark powers, turning the tide of battle in an instant. In the midst of the chaos, Dracula paused for a moment, surveying the damage. The Council had not yet realized the scale of the threat that was rising, but they would soon. Dracula had made his point, and the galaxy would understand that humanity's wrath was not something to be dismissed. He transmitted a message to the Council, his voice calm and cold. "Your actions have consequences," he said. "This is only the beginning. You have no idea what you've unleashed." Dracula turned away from the burning ruins of the fortress, his shadowed form melding with the darkness. His message had been sent, but his war had only just begun. The Council would face him again, this time with no hope of survival. And as he disappeared into the cold void of space, Dracula knew one thing with certainty. Humanity's darkest hour had come, but it was also their finest hour. The time for submission had passed. Now, the galaxy would know what it meant to face the fury of Earth. The Galactic Council's flagship, the Eternity, hung like a looming titan in space, a symbol of its control over the galaxy. Yet, beneath its polished exterior, fear had begun to settle. Dracula's assault had already decimated their outer defenses. His forces, a mix of vampires and rogue human factions, had become an unstoppable tide, sweeping through the Council's strongest outposts with terrifying precision. The Council, desperate and unprepared for such fury, had no choice but to retreat to their final line of defense. On the command deck of the Eternity, the Council's highest leaders convened, faces taut with anxiety. Their once unshakable belief in their dominance was crumbling. They had tried everything, crushed rebellions, wiped out colonies, but none of it had prepared them for Dracula and his vengeful army. The human element, unpredictable and relentless, had thrown them into a panic. "Launch the reserve fleet," a general barked. "This must end today." But as the last line of defense rallied, the shadow of Dracula's forces grew darker on the horizon. His flagship, the Nocturne, a haunting vessel crafted from both ancient vampiric magic and human technology, surged forward, cutting through space like a ghost in the night. Selene's fleet moved in tandem, sleek and silent, every ship poised for destruction. They had reached the heart of the galaxy's power. "Prepare for impact," Selene's voice came over the comms. Calm despite the chaos. "We strike at dawn." The battle began. The Council's elite fleet, though vast, was slow to react. The relentless speed and precision of Dracula's forces shattered their defenses before they could even raise shields. The Nocturne tore through their ranks, moving like a specter, impossible to target, its advanced cloaking technology making it appear and vanish in the blink of an eye. Dracula's dark power worked in tandem with humanity's ingenuity, vampire sorcery draining their energy while human weaponry overwhelmed their ships in a barrage of unexpected tactics. "Retreat!" The Council's leaders screamed, but it was already too late. The Nocturne cut through their ranks like a blade through soft flesh. Dracula stood at the helm of his ship, watching the carnage unfold. His once immortal heart now beat with a singular purpose: the eradication of those who had dared to take his son from him. He was a force that could not be bargained with, an ancient power that had grown stronger with every moment of rage. As the final Council ships crumbled before him, Dracula sent his orders through the comms, his voice a harbinger of death. "Push forward. End this." With those words, the remaining Council forces fell into disarray, unable to contend with Dracula's fury. The fleet crumbled, and as the last of their ships disintegrated into cosmic dust, Dracula's fleet moved in on the Eternity itself. The massive warship, once a symbol of invincibility, now seemed like little more than a paper tiger. Dracula and Selene's forces docked their ships against the hull of the Eternity, preparing for the final confrontation. His feet touched the cold metal floor of the council flagship, his dark presence filling the halls like a storm cloud before a downpour. The council's high officials awaited him, trembling in their palatial command room, their once confident demeanor now replaced with terror. They had prepared for every eventuality except this one. They had expected a fight, but they had not expected Dracula. "You killed my son." Dracula's voice was like a thunderclap, low and furious. "And now you will pay for it." The council's leaders backed away, but there was nowhere to go. Dracula's vampiric speed was unmatched, and in the blink of an eye, he was upon them. Shadows coiled around him like serpents, his power smothering the room. They had underestimated not just Dracula, but humanity itself. Their belief that they could crush a race of creatures born from chaos had been their undoing. One by one, the council leaders fell, their voices drowned out by the terrible silence of Dracula's vengeance. They had tried to quash humanity's potential, to suppress the very spark that had made Earth a beacon of defiance in the galaxy. And for that, they paid the ultimate price. In the end, Dracula stood alone, the only figure left standing amidst the broken bodies of those who had sought to control him. His crimson eyes gleamed with ancient fury, the shadows of vengeance receding slowly as the light of victory began to flicker through the shattered remnants of the council's once unshakable power. "We are not to be ruled," Dracula said, his voice still cold with wrath. "And now the galaxy will know that." Dracula turned away from the carnage, his gaze shifting toward the stars. Earth's place in the galaxy had changed forever. No longer would humanity be relegated to the shadows. No longer would they be ignored or cast aside by the powerful few who saw them as little more than pests to be eradicated. With a final glance at the destruction behind him, Dracula stepped into the darkness. His war had ended, but the message was clear. The galaxy would never forget the wrath of Earth.